Now that you have finished reading March Book 1, let's go over some techniques and tips on writing your reflection. And this could be for any book reflection. We're writing a reflection after reading March Book 1 and March Book 2. But the tips I'm about to share with you are tips that you need to remember when you write any book reflection. First of all, what is a reflection? A reflection is when you look in the mirror and you see yourself, and that's a reflection. But a written reflection is when you think about how this piece of literature made you feel. Okay? And so, with that being said, let's look at some of the tips. And these are based on some of the recent book reflections that you've written. And I have been somewhat not happy with your responses, not necessarily your responses, but how you wrote your reflection. Okay, so number one, use capital letters. A lot of people don't use capital letters in their name. Believe it or not, your first and last name are capital letters. Use capital letters. So if I was going to write my name Claudine, I started with a capital C, and my last name has a capital J. Okay, my middle initial is my maiden name, Sanders, and I started with a capital letter. So if you're going to write your middle name, you have that with a capital letter too, okay? If on your paper, you're going to have an outline and you're going to write my name, again, my name starts with a capital letter. A lot of people wrote, someone, yesterday I graded an essay, they wrote Mr. James. And I'm sort of a miss, okay? MS will be fine instead of the MR. So, your name. My name starts with a capital letter. The author's name starts with a capital letter. Who is the author of March?
John Lewis, Andrew Aiden, and Nate Powell.
So, John Lewis, the book about John Lewis. So when you refer to John Lewis, you're going to capitalize his name. Andrew Aiden was actually the one who wrote this book because what is this book? It's a what?
Graphic novel.
Graphic novel. So, John Lewis told the story to Andrew Aiden, and then Nate Powell was an illustrator. So if you want to refer to some of the illustrations in the book, then say Nate Powell's illustrations, okay? And how you're going to, if you say Nate Powell, you're going to say NatePowell', Nate Powell. Like that, and that's my real scraggly writing really fast. Okay, let's look at another suggestion. If groups of people, when you refer to an ethnic group of people, you capitalize it. African Americans is capitalized. Americans is capitalized, okay? When you talk about a group of people, Japanese Americans is capitalized. The Holocaust is capitalized. World War II, I saw somebody write World War II like lowercase w, I. Not so much. That's a text message. That's not in a professional essay. World War II, you could just write WW, capital I, and that's capitalized. United States is capitalized, okay? The United States is capitalized. Not everything is capitalized. If it's not a person, place, or thing, then you don't capitalize it. And when I say most things aren't capitalized, are they? Person, place, or things are proper nouns, right? But only out of the proper nouns are people and places capitalized. Book titles are capitalized. Say, for instance, I'm trying to think of something that somebody capitalized that was just way out there. Oh, like high school. You don't capitalize high school unless you say the name of your high school. If you say Central High School, then Central High School are capitalized. But if you say I passed by the high school, it's not capitalized because we don't know what high school you passed by. Did you pass by a high school in New Jersey? Or did you pass by a high school in New Mexico? Okay? But if you name the high school, then you capitalize it. So not everything is capitalized. Book titles, I already said that, are capitalized. Here's the difference. When you're writing your reflection or you're writing about a book, you underline it. When you're writing about a book, you underline it. When you are typing your essay, you italicize it. You basically go highlight that book title and then click on the I. Unclick the I and keep it typing, okay? Next thing, civil rights is not capitalized. If you say the Civil Rights Act, which that's a major thing, that's a piece of legislation, it's capitalized. But if you just say, I was fighting for my civil rights, it's not capitalized. I was fighting for my human rights, it's not capitalized, okay? Use periods. Here's how It's really hard for me to talk about using periods because I think that's something that you learn like in second grade, and so it's really, really hard for me to teach that. I tutor a little girl that's in the second grade, and when she's writing, she like loves to get to where a period is at, and she just makes that it looks big, really big. So she gets it. I don't know what happened. Some of you guys don't get it. I read an essay yesterday that had one period. It was a 200-word essay with one period. If that, I tend to think about a period is sort of like a stop sign. If that person was driving and they only used one period, they ran through a lot of stop signs and caused a lot of accidents, okay? So think about this. Say a thought, put a period. Say a thought, put a period. I think it's better if you put more periods than less periods, okay? Because it's okay. If it's a real tiny pause, yesterday I came home, comma, and saw my house was a mess, period. Okay? Or you could say, down the hall, comma, there is a water fountain, period. A short pause is a comma. A long pause is a period. I think it's best if you use periods than not to use them because you can cause multiple wrecks not using them. What I read yesterday was the longest run-on sentence I've ever read. 200 words and it had one period in the whole thing. Okay? So let's don't do like a runaway train because that's what it's like when you don't use a period. It's almost like a runaway train. When you're typing, put a period. Click the space bar and then start a capital letter for the next sentence. Let me repeat that. When you are typing, put a period at the end of the sentence, click the space bar and start the next sentence with a capital letter. You don't have the period here and the capital letter back to back. That space is also showing that a new sentence is starting, okay? That's really, really a common mistake I see. And sometimes it's so confusing to me, I can't tell what to read. Yes, sir.
Is it just one space or is it two? Because my mom always told
Okay,
me.
your mom told you two because that's the way I was taught. It's one now. It became one about 20 years ago. And so I'm not trying to date your mom, but she's somewhere near my age. Because when we were learning to type on a typewriter, and I think that's when it changed, is when because the typewriter you put space, but when we came to using the computers, then it was just one space. Okay, it's just one now. That's a great question. Thank you, because I want to remind myself to talk about that all day today. Thank you. Okay. Now, this is another thing. We're writing a reflection, and we're talking about March Book 1, which was about the what? What was March about?
Racism.
Well, right.
Slavery.
Voting. So, okay. And so, that's where I want to. You said it was about slavery. It's not. How is it about slavery? It's not. I'm not trying to pick on you, but about 60% of my students think that it is. And so that's what I want to talk about. And see, no, I'm not picking on you because it was already up here. Slavery ended in 1865. 1865. That was when Abraham Lincoln wrote the Emancipation Proclamation that freed the slaves. Okay, in 1865. My grandfather was not born into slavery. I'm not going to tell you what year he was born. He was born in the early 1900s. Okay? My dad was born in the 1940s. Okay? I was born in the 1960s. Nobody in my family that I've seen was born in slavery, okay? I wasn't born in slavery. My father wasn't born in slavery. My grandfather, my grandparents weren't born in slavery. This book has nothing to do with slavery. I think that when you confuse the fight for civil rights, that you're confusing that with the fight for freedom, okay? And some people do say that I was fighting for my freedom, but they say that because they felt like that they weren't totally free, because they couldn't vote, because they couldn't live where they wanted to live, because they couldn't marry who they wanted to marry, because they couldn't go where they wanted to go. That limited their freedom, correct? So it wasn't that they were fighting to get out of slavery. They were fighting to be able to have freedom that everyone else had. That should be given to all American citizens. So I remember several years ago with the Martin Luther King Jr. essay committee, and someone was grading them, and she said, well, it was easy to grade them. And I said, why? She said, because I took out over half the essays really fast. And I said, why? She said, well, when they mentioned Martin Luther King was helping free the slaves, that, their essay didn't get it. And she said, so by the time I took all of those out, I only had a handful to work with. I don't know what to do to get everyone to realize that. And perhaps maybe now, because I've never really been honestly courageous enough really to say it. So I'm courageous enough now to say that slavery ended in 1865. Do not write about slavery when you're talking about civil rights. Okay, I'm not, honestly, to be honest with you, I'm not going to teach anything back to 1865. That's just not my subject. I love incorporating history into English, but that's not my area of expertise. So I'm not going to touch it. And I don't have a level of expertise in history, just to be honest, but that's not my level of what I've been exposed to and I could share with you. Okay, so it's civil rights has nothing to do with slavery. Okay, so do not write that. And slavery is not capitalized too, unless it's at the beginning of a sentence. Do I have any other questions? Thank you for saying that. You gave me a pointer, and you also led way into that. Do I have any other questions or comments? Anything? So we're writing a reflection, and you're going to tell about your experience. I'm not going to ask you questions that, or right there questions that you could look at in the book. Where was John Lewis at? That I want to know, what did this book teach you? How are you going to change? How's your mindset going to be? Where are you going to be thinking about? And the final question on the essay is finding your own voice. Okay, finding your own voice. Thank you.